Look, this is amazing for me because the last time I actually had a full gallery show was in 2014, which is when I first came up with the idea. 2 years prior to that, came up with the idea of the Imaginarium, which is essentially a steampunk themed Dickens-style story, which started off as just 6 images. It's only going to be maybe a 20-image short story. It's now a 450-image trilogy that will be a film at the end of it, or Netflix TV series, because I've had 18 approaches for that. There are 150 genuine steampunks in the actual book, because that's my one rule: you can't be in it unless you are a steampunk. And I wasn't, and I'd never heard of steampunk actually until I got a Photoshop book, magazine, which said this is how you create a steampunk image. You take a beautiful model, you stick bits of clock and all sorts on it, and there you go, job done. And I thought, that can't be just it. Googled it, found the Lincoln Steampunk Festival, which is the biggest in the world. 250,000 people went 2 years ago. Unfortunately, COVID has stopped it, but it will be back next August Bank Holiday. I met those 2 people in that image that's on the wall there. The idea of that came from the Sting song, When We Dance Angels Run and Hide. So if you can think that I came up with that image from that song, that will give you a little bit of an idea of maybe why people think I smoke Skittles. So it gives you a little bit of an idea, but I'm a composite artist. And what that means is that I photograph elements, and then I put all those elements together to create the image that's in my head. So the whole story, the 150 pictures, I see them completely finished, and then I will put them together in Photoshop. So if you look at the street scene at the end there as an example, that's 600 hours work, it's 2,000 layers in Photoshop, it's 150 people, 37 buildings, all photographed to create the image that I've got in my head. So the story is actually really quite dark. Murder, kidnapping, prostitution, all the best bits, they're all in there. So essentially that leads me to create those images. Now the issue becomes, it's completely bonkers. It becomes totally, takes over your life, becomes very intense. This is really been quite a remarkable project for me. So I end up doing other images that are not part of the Imaginarium to have a break. So you see some of these on the wall in this area are the balloon images, which started off really with the red balloon in the middle there. You probably won't recognise it with her clothes off, but that is actually Scarlet Butterfly. Who's going to be performing outside very shortly on the lyra pole, and then she's doing a big fire act at the end. And I met her at the asylum and said, look, I'd love you to be a part of my story. So she's in quite a lot of images. She plays a couple of characters in the main book. But I did that, and then I did the Goodwood Art Fair, and a lady said, so nice to see the female form with nude blemishes. And I thought that was a little bit rude. So what do you mean? Thinking, stretch marks or anything else. And she said, no bloody tattoos. And the minute she said that, I came up instantly with the black dark version. So not cute dog in a clown outfit, but a Rottweiler, black balloon, bolt lightning, dark hair, tattoos, all of that led me to that. Which then led me on to a whole series, of which the only one is on the wall, which is the one behind, which, if you take lines, so that's held back by the anxiety of life. So to give you an example of that, I do a talk which is called Reality is for People with No Imagination. And I explain how you can come up with an idea if you haven't got imagination. Because if you can teach someone to use a camera, you can teach somebody to use Photoshop, but if they haven't got the imagination, they would never do what I do. So I do it by saying, look, take 5 different things, colour, props, setting, etc. And the first thing that comes into your mind for 10 seconds under each, you write underneath, select one word from each, and then you will come up with an amazing 5 words. And write a sentence. Cute little dog, dressed as a clown, looking at a woman levitating in midair with a red balloon, for example, gives you the idea of what that picture will be, and therefore, boom, that's the image. I don't work that way. I see those pictures finished in my head, and always have done. So I get everybody in my work to actually, as Hannah will tell you, I get everybody to act. That's the way that I work. I don't work as a traditional photographer. I'm filming a scene to create that I've got in my head. So you'll see there's some other prints in the on this side as well, where the women are actually animals, and that came from me. Generally, it's always about, I want to learn a new technique. So I studied the way that Caravaggio and Vermeer use light with a paintbrush, and they will, it's amazing how they focus the viewer on exactly the part of the picture that they wanted, because the way the light interacted with that work. So I do the same with lights in a studio and Photoshop, so I do exactly the same thing. So I then decided that I wanted to learn a technique where the skin becomes that of an animal, and it's called displacement mapping, which I learned that technique, which then led me on to creating a whole series where the women are actually have got animal skin. Cruella in the middle was the first one, and the difficulty with that is the first time I did it, it just looked like she was wearing a onesie, so it really didn't work. So I had to erase all the white fur, leave the black, and then the actual image worked. But there's a trick with all of this. That's the most difficult part to learn, and that is shadows. If you're going to put loads of composite images together, the shadows have to be bang on correct. And the thing that people don't realise is that there are generally, with one light source, there is 3 shadows. So you will have the contact shadow, so everything that is touching something else anywhere will have a black contact shadow underneath. And then when you've got the light source, and just say for argument's sake it's just the sun, the shadow goes from light to dark, in focus to out of focus. So that's, you have to look at that and do that carefully. But then there's the ambient light shadow, which becomes that brown patch under people. If you don't put those 3 shadows in when you're doing a street scene like that, for example, it doesn't look real. You'll also see in that there's one person in the middle that's behaving ridiculously, because he's the one spotted the camera, and if you were genuinely standing there taking that picture, there would be a pillock in the middle doing exactly that. So, but he has actually been framed for murdering his wife, and he's on the run, and he's basically saying, here I am, try and catch me. So that the story continues through that picture, and it does with all of my work. There's a huge story behind every single one. And over the course of the last sort of 6 or 7 years, I have sold a lot. The Dr. William has been actually in quite a lot of Photoshop magazines, and some of these balloon images have been in a lot of art magazines. And I've also found out last week that I'm in Flux, which is a 3-week, 25-day actually, exhibition in Greenwich, which that's basically saying, all right, you said enough now, shut up. But that's a major thing to be able to get into, because they only select 40 artists for that, and it's a proper big time exhibition, which is I didn't even have to apply. They did a write-up on me in January in the Flux magazine, and Lisa Gray got in touch with me and said, we'd love you to be a part of it. So I didn't even have to apply, that's great for me. So I'm really chuffed about that. One last thing is, all the things you see in all the images prop-wise, like these wings, for example, they do open, they do work. Dr. William, who is the main character there and over there, he makes all of my props, and I think I'll just show you this, which is in here. So Pete will spend months making something, and so this is a monogoggle, and you can see the amount of work that's gone into that. You'll see that the hands are actually sculpted solid silver forks, and then he puts copper knuckles on them. Now, in the story, there is an object called the necessity, which is 6 of these forks that hold a glowing orb, and when you just touch a little lever, it opens slowly. £12,000 worth of work. It took Pete a year to make. Similarly with the wings, they do steam. I haven't got them obviously working, and unfortunately they got a little bit damaged when I was bringing them down today, so I've got a bit of soldering work to do when I get back. But that's the point. The thing about steampunk is it's a very creative thing to be a part of. There are no rules, only one, and that is be splendid. In other words, be polite, be well mannered, and be creative. And that's what I'm so proud to actually be part of it, because I wasn't, and it took a little while to be accepted, because everybody thought that I was full of it and actually probably never going to do what I've actually done, but I've managed to do it, and it's completely different now. I don't have to ask anybody to be in my story. I've got a waiting list, so there's 500 steampunks in book 2, there'll be 4,000 in book 3. I'm flying around the world to photograph as many steampunk groups as possible to build a huge 4,000 person image. So if that one took 600 hours, God knows how long that's going to take. But it'll give you an idea. It's just that I know where the story's going, and that's how it will end up. But please, if you've got any questions, I'm more than happy. As you can tell, I can talk for English. So I'm more than happy to talk about it, and please enjoy this, because this is fantastic. I'm really so thankful that you all came along.
Thank you, Gary.